So now today, counting the dates, it's getting close to, I don't know, it's April right now, April 8th, as I'm recording this episode. It's getting dangerously close to like 6 months, or not even close to a year of not having anything to do with my university learning. And a lot of things are reconfiguring themselves and a lot of bad habits. I'm unlearning a lot of bad habits that I picked up from the academy. And one of the things that I found myself struggling with, or I'm struggling to do this, is note taking. I don't take a lot of notes from my reading anymore because a lot of the times in university, you take notes compulsively. You sit down, you read a paper, and before you can even finish the paper, you think to yourself, I'm going to construct a page full of perfect notes on this one paper. And that process gets even more frustrating when you go on YouTube. You're basically bombarded with these videos. These people are way more attractive than me. Their stationery sets are way more expensive than mine. And of course, their cursive handwriting is perhaps 1,000 times more impressive than mine. And there they are taking these perfect notes. And there I am sitting there probably with the rest of you guys thinking the same thing. How the hell did I have all the time to do all that note taking? Now, you might be sitting there, you're thinking to yourself, Robin, shut the hell up. You're a lazy slob. If you just had a little bit more time, if you had a little bit more dedication, you can take perfect notes on everything you've ever read. Now, here's the main problem. Even for those of you guys who are capable of taking these beautifully formed one-page long notes on a single title, how often do you go back to review those notes? At least for me personally, I virtually never look at the notes that I took in college. At the time, the intention was, 10 years later, I'm still going to return to all the stuff that I've learned in college, and I'm still going to read my own notes just to recall all the stuff that I've learned. But nowadays, I virtually never find anything useful in those notes. See, here's a note-taking habit that's so deeply ingrained in our heads, which is that you want to take notes in a linear fashion, right? For example, I still have my AP psychology notes from when I was a 16-year-old studying AP psychology in high school, and it was basically laid out like 1.1 is this thing, 1.2 is that thing, and 1.3, and by the time you get to 1.6, you're trying to find the snooze button because it's so fucking boring. These notes are extremely hard to review. It's extremely hard to identify the ideas within these notes. Well, you can format it correctly, but this linear format, this is not how we think. A lot of the times we think in this very relational way. One idea reminds us of another idea, and that other idea expands into 4 different components. In a sense, ideas exist in a web with many other ideas. So it's really hard if you try to condense all that information into a linear format. It actually just destroys the entire shape of thinking. And these notes typically fall into the category of information, not knowledge, information. So you're essentially gathering a lot of stuff that you've read, and you're merely putting that stuff, you're reshuffling that stuff in a different formation. So you're putting it in formation. And virtually for your understanding, that serves zero practical value. So far we can identify 2 problems, right? So number 1, after graduation, it's actually really hard to find time to take better notes. It's actually impossible to spend so much time worrying about note-taking, and sometimes it gets so overwhelming that I simply quit note-taking for a couple of months. I just simply read stuff without taking any notes. And problem number 2 is that the traditional way that we've been taught to take notes is actually antithetical to the shape of thinking. It's actually quite contrary to how ideas work. So we kind of need a different strategies to really capture the shape of thinking and to restore that relational nature of how ideas work, so you can have a bank where one idea connects to another idea, that you're able to seek a lot of inspiration from this web. And here is where syntopical reading comes in. And syntopical reading is an idea proposed in this book, How to Read a Book. And I think the guy in here, he has a really 20th century idea of syntopical reading. And I think the strategy or the technique that I'm going to present you with today are going to modernize it, are going to make it suitable to your tastes and likes, are going to make it really efficient for you to organize different ideas relationally instead of linearly. So let's start with the word Syntopicon or syntopical. This is basically a fancier way of saying a collection of topics, right? So the key reframe here is that instead of thinking about an idea linearly, breaking down an idea in terms of like cause and effect, you need to start to think about your reading habits as you hunting for ideas instead of just facts to support those ideas. And remember that whole thing with like, we tend to think relationally instead of linearly. In order for you to get the most holistic view on a certain topic, you kind of have to contrast and compare different ideas from different books under certain themes and categories. So instead of dedicating a whole linear page to one specific idea or one specific field of understanding, a Syntopicon allows you to tease out a key idea and to categorize them under different themes. So you're going to have this comprehensive system. So every time when you think about like, I'd love to write an essay on love, you can simply click into the love category and be bombarded with all these entries that you've harvested from books. So now thinking as a shape, you're thinking about love. And then here's this person on love, or Foucault on love, or here's this person, Kafka on love, and here's this person, Byung-Chul Han on love. So you have this broader category to kind of guide the shape of your thinking, and you're able to really compare and contrast these different perspectives. So very quickly, and I have a really exciting announcement to make at the end of this video, here are the 5 pointers to start syntopical reading. I actually wrote an in-depth post on this topic, so if you want to read that, I'll also link that article in the description down below. So here we are, rapid fire, 5 steps to achieve this kind of relational syntopical reading. Number 1, find relevant passages. As you go through a book, forget about trying to reword everything into a single document, and forget about taking linear notes, tracking every movement of where the author's arguments are going. Simply look for striking ideas that can be encapsulated in one passage. Ideally, you want one single passage that captures an entire idea. These are going to be the prime candidates for you to develop your Syntopicon. And number 2, once you have an idea, for example, you encounter a really interesting passage from Foucault about the movement of history, you need to start to put this passage that you've harvested into your own words, because I know writers are egomaniacs, they have their own little definitions, they have their own views on a topic, and it's going to make it really difficult for you to synthesize it under different themes. So rewording that passage in your own words is going to help with one of 2 things. You're going to understand this idea more clearly, and 2, you're actually going to have a common language as you start to put together your Syntopicon. And number 3, you need to start defining the themes or the topics for these entries to fall under. For example, for me, in this Syntopicon template that I've built with my partner, I have certain categories like knowledge, love, writing. So in a sense, whenever I enter an excerpt in my own words into my Syntopicon, they're automatically grouped under these different categories, which makes referencing and makes noting things down, makes thinking extremely intuitive. And these categories can be as broad or as narrow as you'd like them to be. And this is all based on a call from your intuition, because all of us think differently. And the whole point of a Syntopicon is to have these themes that you recognize for you to group certain ideas under. And number 4, once you have the Syntopical overview, it's time for you to start to compare and contrast different ideas. As your Syntopicon expands, you're going to see a lot of conflicting views and conflicting opinions under the same category. And I think critical thinking has unfortunately become a bit of a buzz term, but this way of viewing ideas is really one of the more practical ways for us to practice critical thinking, because if you have so many different points of view under the same topic about these philosophers thinking about the same thing, having a syntopically organized note structure is going to make this comparison process a breeze, and as a result, you are going to have a much more of a firmer grasp on this topic that you're trying to investigate. And finally, a key feature of a Syntopicon is that it's actually supposed to reveal your blind spots. And again, in this template that I recently started building and I started beta testing with some of my paid subscribers on Substack, is that I included a chart that shows you your knowledge distribution, which my partner called it the analytics of your mind, which I find to be super interesting. A lot of our learning tends to skew towards one direction or another, and a function of the Syntopicon is for you to realize what part in your knowledge graph is kind of missing. And over time, as you accumulate more entries, you're going to start to see your blind spots more clearly. And I think this is a must-have feature in the Syntopicon, because unless you have a guideline for what to read next, you're going to find it really difficult to categorize all the things that you've been reading. So those are the 5 steps to building a Syntopicon. Find relevant passages that contain key ideas and put those ideas in your own words in a system, and then start assigning these entries to different themes so you can have that syntopical comparison happening. And number 4, compare and contrast these different perspectives. And finally, watch for your knowledge blind spots. If you want a more in-depth look where I give you a ton of examples on how to build a Syntopicon, make sure to check out the article down below. And on the other hand, I also have an expression of interest form because we're about to release the Notion template for Syntopicon. This is something that started off as something I just built for myself. And over time, I started to realize, oh my God, a lot of people are struggling with this thing where they want to take notes from books, but they don't have the tools, nor did have like the simple to use system where they can basically import import something and over time shows them a very holistic view of what they've been learning. So I'm personally really excited to release this template really soon. So if you're interested in that, I have a expression of interest form. So if you want to get this on day one, once it's released, type your email down below through a link, and I look forward to sending this one to you. A lot of work has been poured into making this the absolute best note capturing system for you guys, and I can't wait to tell you guys more about it. So stay tuned, enter your email below, and I'll see you soon with more. Robin Walden here. Hope that you're having a great day so far. That's all I have for this week's episode of Wednesday Rambles, and I'll see you next week around the same time for more food for thought. Take care. I'll see you next time.